She walked into the restaurant with a quiet confidence that seemed to belong only to her. The soft hum of conversations filled the space, mixed with the gentle clinking of cutlery and the faint melody playing in the background. It was early evening, and the golden light from the setting sun filtered through the tall windows, casting a warm glow across the polished wooden tables. She preferred this time of day for dinner. The world felt slower, calmer, and she could enjoy a moment just for herself. Choosing a small table near the window, she settled in and glanced around. The restaurant was not crowded, which was exactly how she liked it. She enjoyed the comfort of being surrounded by people without having to engage with them. There was a freedom in eating alone, a simple pleasure that many overlooked. Some might have felt lonely, but she felt content. Eating alone allowed her to focus on herself, on her thoughts, and the subtle beauty in everyday life. The waiter approached with a polite smile, and she returned one in kind. She didn't need to make conversation. A simple nod was enough. She scanned the menu, though she had already decided on her favorite dish. It was a small ritual she held dear, a familiar comfort in the midst of her often unpredictable days. As she waited for her meal, she watched people around her. A couple laughed softly at a corner table. An older man read a newspaper quietly, and a young woman typed rapidly on her laptop. Everyone was in their own world, and she liked being able to blend into hers. Her thoughts drifted to the day she had just left behind. It had been busy, full of the usual tasks and small challenges. She remembered the moment of quiet in the morning, when she had sipped her coffee on the balcony, feeling the cool breeze brush against her skin. Moments like that were her secret treasures, small reminders that life didn't always have to rush. Now sitting here, she allowed herself to relax fully, to enjoy the peaceful silence that surrounded her. The aroma of her food arrived first, carried by the attentive waiter. She took a moment to breathe it in, letting the smell fill her senses. It was comforting, like a warm embrace after a long day. She thanked the waiter softly, and he left her with a small nod. Alone, she could savor each bite, each flavor without distraction. It was a slow, deliberate process, almost meditative. She noticed the textures, the spices, the balance of flavors. Eating alone wasn't lonely. It was a form of self-care, a chance to reconnect with herself. As she ate, she felt a quiet presence nearby. It was subtle at first, almost imperceptible, like a shadow at the edge of her awareness. She glanced up, meeting the eyes of a man at a nearby table. He was watching her, but not in an intrusive way. There was curiosity in his gaze, a gentle interest that didn't demand attention but simply acknowledged her existence. She looked away, feeling a strange mix of surprise and amusement. It was unusual to be noticed in such a calm, unassuming way. Her mind wandered briefly to the idea of being noticed. Often, she went through life quietly without drawing attention. She didn't seek validation from others. She was comfortable in her own skin. Yet there was something intriguing about someone recognizing her presence even from a distance. She returned to her meal, though a small awareness lingered, a subtle shift in the atmosphere around her. She finished her plate slowly, savoring the last bites. The waiter returned, clearing the dishes with a practiced ease. She nodded her thanks, and he left her once again in the soft glow of the evening light. She leaned back in her chair, letting herself stretch and relax. There was a freedom in this solitude, a reminder that her life didn't need to be measured by the company she kept, but by the moments she cherished. Outside, the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the street. She watched the world continue in its hurried rhythm, while she remained in her own bubble of calm. She noticed small details. The way a bird landed gracefully on the sidewalk, the soft sway of a tree in the breeze, the laughter of children playing nearby. These were the tiny joys that often went unnoticed but held their own kind of magic. The man at the nearby table shifted slightly, and their eyes met again. This time he offered a polite nod, a silent acknowledgement that carried more than words could say. She found herself smiling faintly, a warm, private smile that no one else needed to see. There was no rush, no expectation, just a quiet understanding that had passed between them. It was fleeting, yet it lingered in her mind, adding a subtle layer to the evening's calm. She decided to stay a little longer, sipping her drink slowly and letting the quiet wash over her. She thought about the simple pleasures of life: good food, a peaceful environment, and moments of unexpected connection, however brief. Life didn't always have to be dramatic or filled with excitement to be meaningful. Sometimes it was the quiet dinners alone, the small rituals, and the fleeting encounters that left the deepest impressions. As the evening deepened, she felt a gentle contentment. She had her own world, her own rhythm, and the ability to find joy in her solitude. Yet there was a hint of curiosity now, a small spark ignited by the quiet presence that had observed her. It was not a longing exactly, but an awareness that the world could still surprise her. Even in the calmest moments, she stood preparing to leave, feeling the gentle weight of the evening settle pleasantly around her. The lights of the restaurant cast a warm glow on her as she walked toward the exit. Outside, the city hummed with life, but she moved through it with a sense of quiet purpose. The world continued in its usual rush, but she had found her pause, her space to breathe and simply exist. She paused at the door, glancing back one last time. The man was still there, seated quietly, watching as she left. There was a subtle acknowledgement in his eyes, a silent promise that perhaps this small encounter was not entirely without meaning. She didn't know him, and yet in that brief moment a connection had formed. It was simple, quiet, and unspoken, but it carried a weight that lingered even as she stepped out into the evening air. Walking down the street, she felt the cool breeze on her face, a reminder that the world was wide and full of possibilities. Her dinner had been more than just a meal. It had been a quiet affirmation of who she was and what she valued. She walked with steady steps, carrying the calm of the evening with her, unaware that this quiet night would soon hold unexpected surprises. For now, though, she was content to be herself, alone yet not lonely, navigating her world with a quiet grace that was entirely her own. The next evening, she returned to the same restaurant. There was something comforting about the routine, the familiar surroundings and the soft hum of conversation. The dim lights and warm atmosphere had a calming effect on her, and she liked that. She chose the same table by the window, as if it were a small haven carved out just for her. Sitting down, she felt a gentle sense of anticipation, though she did not know why. It was a quiet, ordinary moment, yet there was a subtle electricity in the air. As she settled in and opened her menu, she noticed a presence nearby. The man from the previous night was seated at a table not far from hers. He was alone, yet there was a different energy about him now, more attentive, more deliberate. His eyes met hers briefly, and she felt the same curious intrigue as before. There was nothing intimidating in his gaze, just a quiet interest, a gentle acknowledgement of her presence. She returned to her menu, pretending to focus on the food, yet she couldn't help but notice him observing her from time to time. She had always been cautious about strangers, about people who showed sudden interest without context. Yet something about him felt different. He did not demand her attention or invade her space. There was a subtle respect in the way he existed near her, almost like he understood the value of boundaries. It made her curious, though she would never admit it to anyone. She was content with her own company, yet there was a small part of her that wondered why he was watching, why he seemed drawn to her in a way that felt both gentle and deliberate. Her meal arrived, and she allowed herself to enjoy it slowly, savoring each bite. The taste, the warmth, and the comfort of the food filled her senses, yet her awareness of him lingered. Occasionally, their eyes would meet across the room, a silent conversation that needed no words. It was subtle, almost like a game played in quiet acknowledgement. She smiled faintly, feeling a mix of amusement and curiosity. There was something about this man that intrigued her, though she didn't yet understand why. After a while, he stood up and walked toward her table, not hurriedly, but with careful steps. Her heart gave a small, unnoticeable flutter, not from fear but from the unexpectedness of the moment. He stopped just short of her table, and she looked up at him, meeting his eyes directly. He gave a small, respectful nod, and she nodded back. There was no rush, no tension, only a gentle awareness that something significant was about to happen. He spoke quietly, almost as if sharing a secret meant only for her. "Mind if I sit for a moment?" he asked, his tone calm and unassuming. She paused, considering her answer. Normally, she would decline such an invitation without hesitation, but something in his presence made her pause. There was no arrogance, no expectation, just a quiet, genuine interest. She gave a small, polite nod, and he pulled out a chair, sitting down with careful respect for her space. Their conversation began slowly, with small pleasantries about the restaurant and the evening. He asked about her day, not in a probing way but with genuine interest. She found herself answering honestly, sharing small details she would not usually give to strangers. There was a rare ease in his demeanor that encouraged openness without pressure. For the first time in a long while, she felt the presence of another person without the weight of judgment or expectation. He talked too, but never about wealth or status. Instead, he shared simple stories, moments from his own life that revealed a vulnerability she had not expected. He spoke about his solitude, the loneliness that often accompanied his life despite the luxuries around him. There was a quiet honesty in his words that resonated with her, a glimpse behind the carefully maintained image of success and power. It made her see him as a person, not as a title or a presence to be impressed by. The more they spoke, the more she noticed subtle details about him. There was a softness in his gestures, a thoughtfulness in the way he listened. His eyes were attentive, not merely polite, but genuinely engaged. He smiled when something amused him, and there was a warmth in the expression that made her feel unexpectedly comfortable. She began to sense that he was not used to encountering someone who simply existed without being swayed by wealth or power, and perhaps that was why he was drawn to her. Time passed unnoticed. The evening grew darker outside, and the restaurant filled with the quiet rhythm of dinner conversations. Yet, for both of them, the world seemed to narrow down to the small space around their table. There was no hurry, no external distractions, only the shared moment, a connection forming in the most unexpected way. She felt a rare sense of being truly seen, not for her appearance or charm, but for the way she carried herself, the way she spoke, the quiet presence she exuded. He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice even more. "I hope I'm not overstepping," he said. "But there's something about you that makes me want to know more, to spend time together. Not because of who I am, but because of who you are." She paused, processing the words. It was unusual to hear such sincerity without pretense. She found herself listening intently, intrigued but cautious. There was honesty in his tone, a vulnerability that invited trust rather than demanded it. They talked about small things then, about dreams, memories, and experiences that shaped them. She shared stories of her childhood, the lessons learned, the challenges overcome. He shared moments of solitude and reflection, the rare quiet moments he treasured amidst a busy, demanding life. There was a balance in their exchange, a mutual curiosity and respect that made the evening feel significant yet unforced. Occasionally, he would glance at her with a thoughtful expression, and she felt the weight of his gaze without discomfort. It was not intrusive but observant, a quiet recognition of her presence, her thoughts, and perhaps even her hesitations. She wondered how someone with such an intense, complicated life could be so gentle in his approach. It made her feel both cautious and intrigued, a blend of emotions she had rarely experienced in such a brief encounter. The waiter approached, refilling their glasses and offering to bring dessert, but they declined politely. The focus remained on the conversation, the quiet rhythm of dialogue and understanding. There was no rush, no pressure to impress or to reveal more than they were ready to. It was a rare space where they could simply exist together, sharing a moment without expectation or agenda. As the evening drew to a close, he spoke once more softly. "I don't usually do this, but I feel like meeting you again would be worthwhile. If you're open to it, I would like to see you here again." She considered the offer, aware of the unusual nature of the moment. She did not need to answer immediately. Her thoughts would guide her next steps. Yet there was a small spark of curiosity, a subtle pull that made the idea of another meeting feel promising rather than burdensome. She nodded gently, acknowledging the sentiment without committing fully. There was a delicate balance in her response, a way of honoring her independence while also opening the door to possibilities. He smiled, not with arrogance or expectation, but with quiet appreciation. They exchanged polite goodbyes, and she left the table with a sense of calm and intrigue, her mind replaying fragments of the conversation, the unusual ease and the understated connection. Walking home, she reflected on the evening. There was an unexpected layer of excitement beneath the calm, a sense that the ordinary could shift into something remarkable without warning. She felt the warmth of curiosity, the gentle anticipation of what might come next, and the quiet realization that not all encounters were random. Some were subtle, almost invisible, yet they left a mark, lingering in thoughts and feelings long after the moment had passed. She entered her apartment and settled into her evening routine, the quiet of her space welcoming her. Yet her mind wandered to the man at the restaurant, to the unexpected comfort of his presence and to the small spark of intrigue that now flickered within her. It was not romance yet, not even a hint of it, but there was a curiosity that could not be ignored. Something had shifted in the ordinary, and she sensed that the next encounter might hold a significance she could not yet fully understand. As she prepared for sleep, she smiled softly to herself, a quiet acknowledgement of the day's unexpected turn. Life had a way of surprising her in the smallest, most unassuming ways. She had gone to dinner alone, seeking comfort in solitude, yet she left with a sense of possibility, a quiet awareness that sometimes the most meaningful connections began in silence and observation, waiting for the right moment to unfold. She returned to the restaurant again, a sense of calm and familiarity accompanying her steps. The evening was quiet, the same gentle hum of conversations blending with the soft music playing in the background. She chose her usual table by the window, settling into the comfort of the familiar surroundings. There was a sense of anticipation she could not quite name, an unspoken awareness that this dinner would be different, though she did not know how. He was already there when she arrived. He had claimed a table not far from hers, his presence subtle yet noticeable. His eyes met hers briefly, and she felt the same quiet curiosity as before. The acknowledgement was gentle, almost shy, but there was an intensity beneath it she could not ignore. She allowed herself to smile faintly, a small gesture that seemed to pass between them as a silent greeting. It was unspoken, yet it carried a weight that neither needed to explain. As she ate, she noticed him watching, but not in an intrusive way. It was careful, deliberate, a study of her without expectation or judgment. There was something about his presence that made her feel both observed and safe at the same time. She returned to her meal, savoring each bite, each flavor. Yet her mind remained aware of the quiet tension, the unspoken connection growing between them. She had felt his curiosity before, but tonight, there was something more, a subtle anticipation that made her senses sharper. After a while, he stood and approached her table with slow, careful steps. She did not feel fear, only a heightened awareness. When he reached her, he lowered his voice to a whisper, close enough that only she could hear. "Be my girlfriend for a while," he said. The words were unexpected, a gentle request rather than a demand. Her initial reaction was surprise, mixed with skepticism. She had not anticipated such a direct proposal, especially from someone she barely knew. Yet there was no arrogance in his tone, no pressure, only a quiet honesty that caught her off guard. She looked at him, studying his expression. There was a sincerity in his eyes that made her pause, a vulnerability she had not seen before. He did not ask for immediate agreement, nor did he expect her to respond without thought. It was as if he had been waiting for the right moment to speak, and now that it had come, he offered it with gentle respect. Her mind raced with questions. Why her? Why now? Yet there was a strange sense of possibility in the air, a feeling that something meaningful could emerge from this unexpected moment. He continued quietly, explaining his reasoning. He was lonely, despite his wealth and status. He sought a connection that was genuine, untainted by his money or influence. He wanted someone who could see him as a person, someone who would not be impressed by the trappings of his life but would value him for who he truly was. His words were careful, deliberate, and honest. She listened, feeling an unusual mix of curiosity, caution, and intrigue. Her thoughts swirled. She valued her independence and had always been cautious with her heart. She had learned to navigate the world alone, finding joy and comfort in her own company. Yet there was something in his presence, something in the way he spoke and observed her that made her question her own reservations. It was not a demand for love or commitment, but an invitation to explore, to see if a connection could exist in its simplest form. She asked questions softly, wanting to understand his intentions better. How long did he want this arrangement? What did it mean for him? He answered with honesty, explaining that he did not want to complicate her life or impose expectations. He simply wanted to share time with someone who could see him clearly, who could experience a connection without pretense or obligation. His words were measured, respectful, and surprisingly grounded, contrasting with the world of extravagance he usually inhabited. As the conversation unfolded, she began to see him differently. He was not the untouchable figure she might have imagined. He was human, with insecurities, hopes, and a longing for genuine companionship. There was a rare humility in the way he approached her, a recognition that relationships required understanding and mutual respect. She found herself intrigued, her curiosity growing alongside the quiet tension that lingered in the air. They talked about small things next, sharing anecdotes and experiences that revealed glimpses of their personalities. She spoke of her routines, the small joys she treasured, and the challenges she had faced. He listened intently, responding with empathy and understanding. The conversation flowed naturally, each word building a bridge between them. There was no rush, no expectation, only the slow unfolding of a connection that had started with quiet observation and had now moved into something more intimate. She noticed the subtle gestures he made, the way he leaned slightly forward when she spoke, the careful attention in his gaze, the gentle pauses that allowed her space to express herself. It was not overwhelming or imposing, but it carried an undeniable weight, a presence that made her feel recognized and valued. She began to see the possibility of trust forming, a rare and delicate connection that did not demand anything beyond the moment. Her initial surprise began to shift into contemplation. She considered the implications of accepting his proposal, even temporarily. It was unconventional, unexpected, and yet there was an honesty in the arrangement that appealed to her sense of reason. She did not feel pressured. She felt invited. There was a clarity in his request that made the idea of exploration feel safe rather than reckless. He spoke again softly, acknowledging the unusual nature of the situation. "I know this is sudden," he said, "and you don't need to answer right now. I just wanted to be honest with my feelings and intentions. I hope you can consider it, and if not, I will understand completely." His words carried respect, patience, and a quiet hope. She felt a mix of emotions, curiosity, caution, and an unexpected sense of warmth. He had presented a possibility without demanding it, and in that gesture alone he had shown a depth of understanding she found rare. They continued to converse, the evening stretching gently around them. She began to relax, sensing that this moment was not about pressure or expectation, but about mutual recognition and exploration. There was a balance between vulnerability and respect, curiosity and caution. She realized that the evening had transformed from a simple dinner into a meeting of minds and hearts, an unexpected encounter that could change the way she thought about connection. As the night grew darker, the restaurant around them seemed to fade into quiet background noise. They were no longer two strangers in a room, but participants in a delicate dance of conversation, understanding, and subtle attraction. She noticed the small details, the way he listened, the softness in his expressions, the care with which he spoke. These gestures, though simple, carried an emotional weight that made her feel seen and valued. She finally spoke, her voice gentle but deliberate. She would consider his proposal, not as a decision made in haste, but as an exploration of what could be. She valued her independence and would maintain her boundaries, but she was willing to see where this connection might lead. His face reflected quiet relief and appreciation, and a small smile passed between them, signaling an unspoken understanding. There was no certainty, no promise, only the possibility of shared moments, honest interaction, and genuine discovery. They exchanged quiet farewells as the evening drew to a close. She left the restaurant with a mix of emotions, anticipation, curiosity, and a subtle thrill at the unexpected turn her evening had taken. She walked home slowly, replaying the conversation in her mind, savoring the delicate balance of surprise and honesty. For the first time in a long while, she felt the stirrings of possibility, not a certainty, not a demand, but an invitation to explore the unknown with caution, curiosity, and openness. At home, she reflected on the evening. It had started like any other dinner, quiet and familiar, but it had transformed into something extraordinary. A stranger had spoken directly to her heart, not with force or expectation, but with honesty and respect. She smiled softly, acknowledging the unique and rare nature of the encounter. Life, she realized, had a way of creating moments that were unexpected yet meaningful, moments that could challenge her perceptions and open doors to experiences she had never imagined. As she prepared for bed, she felt a quiet excitement mingled with thoughtfulness. There was no certainty in what lay ahead, but there was a clear sense that the ordinary could shift into something remarkable without warning. She carried with her the memory of his words, the sincerity in his gaze, and the subtle promise of connection. The night had whispered a possibility, and she was ready to see where it might lead, aware that the journey would be measured by understanding, respect, and the slow unfolding of trust. Days passed, and she found herself thinking about the encounter more than she expected. The words he had whispered, the sincerity in his eyes, and the gentle way he had approached her lingered in her mind. It was unusual for her to dwell on someone so quickly, yet there was something about him that sparked curiosity and a quiet warmth she could not ignore. She wondered what it would be like to spend more time in his presence, to understand the person behind the careful demeanor and whispered words. They agreed to meet again at the same restaurant, a place that had become a neutral ground, comfortable for both of them. When she arrived, he was already there, seated at the familiar table. Their greeting was soft and warm, a smile shared between two people who had already begun to recognize a connection. There was no awkwardness, only a sense of anticipation and the quiet excitement of familiarity. They started slowly, talking about ordinary things at first. Work, books, the little events of their days. Yet even in these small conversations, a deeper connection began to form. She noticed the thoughtfulness in his responses, the genuine interest he showed in her life, and the patience he had to listen without interrupting. It was rare to find someone so fully present, and she felt a growing comfort in his presence. As the weeks went on, their meetings became more frequent. Sometimes it was the restaurant, other times a quiet cafe or even walks in the park. Each encounter revealed a little more about each other, their fears, hopes, and personal truths. She shared stories from her childhood, experiences that had shaped her, and the lessons she had learned. He listened attentively, occasionally offering insights or sharing similar experiences from his own life. The walls that often surrounded her heart began to lower, replaced by a cautious but genuine trust. She began to notice subtle changes in herself. She felt lighter, more open to experiences, and more willing to accept kindness and attention without suspicion. There was a quiet joy in these moments, a gentle reassurance that connection could be simple, respectful, and fulfilling. She found herself laughing more freely, sharing thoughts she would normally keep to herself, and appreciating the little things, a thoughtful gesture, a shared smile, a quiet conversation that lasted longer than either had expected. He, too, seemed different in her presence. The usual tension that often accompanied his life appeared to ease when he was with her. He spoke with less formality, laughed with genuine amusement, and shared moments of vulnerability he rarely allowed others to see. It was a side of him that few had witnessed, a human side beyond the wealth and power. She recognized the rare opportunity to connect with someone who was both extraordinary and profoundly relatable. Their conversations deepened over time. They explored topics beyond daily routines, dreams, personal philosophies, fears, and values. She appreciated his honesty and his ability to share without overwhelming her. He respected her boundaries, never pushing, always allowing space for reflection and choice. Their connection grew organically, built on mutual respect, curiosity, and the willingness to be present with each other. They faced small challenges as well. Friends and family occasionally questioned her motives, wondering why she would spend time with someone so wealthy. She ignored the judgments, relying on her intuition and the authenticity of their interactions. There were moments of self-doubt, wondering if the connection was genuine or influenced by his status. But the sincerity in his words and actions consistently reassured her. One evening, as they walked along a quiet street after dinner, she spoke about her fears of being misunderstood and judged. He listened carefully, holding her gaze with empathy and understanding. "I want you to feel safe with me," he said softly. "I don't want to change you or influence your choices. I just want to be present if you allow me." His words were deliberate, not a declaration of love or ownership, but a recognition of her autonomy and dignity. She felt seen in a way she had rarely experienced, and the trust between them deepened. They shared moments of quiet intimacy too, sitting side by side on a park bench, watching the sunset or enjoying a quiet meal together without the need for conversation. These moments, small and simple, carried a profound meaning. It was in the silence that they discovered the depth of their connection, the comfort of being with someone who understood the value of presence and attentiveness. Their bond was tested occasionally by misunderstandings or miscommunications, but they learned to navigate them with patience and respect. She realized that trust was not built instantly. It required consistency, understanding, and willingness to see each other fully. He in turn respected her perspective, acknowledging her feelings and making space for dialogue rather than assumption. Each challenge strengthened their connection, reinforcing the foundation of mutual respect and genuine interest. As time went on, she noticed subtle changes in her perception of the world. She became more aware of the kindness in everyday moments, the beauty of small gestures, and the possibility of connection without compromise. Her interactions with others improved, influenced by the patient, attentive presence she had experienced with him. She carried the calm, respectful energy of their meetings into her daily life, finding joy in simple experiences and valuing authenticity over appearances. They laughed together often, shared stories, and supported each other through minor struggles. She found herself enjoying the balance between independence and companionship, appreciating the way their arrangement allowed for personal space while nurturing connection. It was a delicate balance and one that required conscious effort, but it brought a sense of fulfillment she had not expected. One evening, after a particularly long conversation about their hopes and fears, he reached out and gently held her hand. It was a simple gesture, yet it carried the weight of trust and mutual understanding. She did not pull away. Instead, she allowed herself to feel the warmth and reassurance of the touch. In that moment, words were unnecessary. The connection they had built spoke louder than anything they could say aloud. Their journey was not without moments of doubt. She sometimes questioned whether spending time with someone so different from her world could last or remain genuine. He too grappled with concerns, wondering if his intentions were clear and if the temporary nature of their arrangement would be respected. Yet each moment of uncertainty was met with open communication, patience, and a mutual desire to honor the connection without imposing expectations. Through these shared experiences, they discovered the importance of authenticity, respect, and the value of being present. She learned that connection could be profound without being overwhelming, that trust could develop gradually, and that vulnerability could be met with care rather than judgment. He learned that companionship could be genuine without control, that being seen as a person mattered more than status, and that mutual respect could foster meaningful connection. By the end of Part 4, their bond had strengthened significantly. They were no longer two strangers navigating curiosity and intrigue, but companions exploring the potential of a meaningful connection. Their journey was slow, measured, and deliberate, yet it was filled with moments of joy, laughter, trust, and subtle intimacy. They had built a relationship that honored individuality, respected boundaries, and embraced the simplicity of genuine human connection, leaving the door open for deeper understanding and future possibilities. The days grew warmer, and the gentle rhythm of their meetings continued. She had grown comfortable with his presence, appreciating the balance of independence and companionship that had become part of their lives. Each meeting brought new insights, laughter, and moments of quiet reflection. Yet there was an underlying awareness that their arrangement was temporary, that at some point, a decision would have to be made about what this connection truly meant. One evening, as they walked along a quiet street after dinner, she felt a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. The city lights reflected in puddles from a recent rain, creating a soft, shimmering path. She walked beside him, noticing the way he seemed relaxed yet alert, a subtle reflection of the careful balance he maintained in his life. There was a comfortable silence between them, punctuated by small observations about the world around them. The flicker of a streetlight, the distant laughter of children, the rhythm of their footsteps on the wet pavement. Finally, he spoke, his voice soft and deliberate. "I know we agreed this was temporary," he said, "but I need to know what this has meant to you. For me, it has been significant. I want to understand how you feel without pressure or expectation, but with honesty." She paused, considering her response carefully. She had learned to value her independence, her own voice, and her ability to make thoughtful decisions. Yet she also recognized the depth of the connection they had built together, the rare understanding and trust that had developed over time. She spoke slowly, choosing her words with care. "It has meant a lot to me. I did not expect to find someone who listens, who respects my space, who allows me to be myself without judgment. I have enjoyed every moment, every conversation, and every quiet silence. I have grown, learned to trust, and discovered a new way to experience connection. This has been meaningful in a way I did not anticipate. Her words carried both reflection and sincerity, a testament to the journey they had shared. He listened, absorbing each word with a quiet intensity. I feel the same, he said softly. I did not expect this either. But being with you has changed my perspective, reminded me of what it feels like to connect with someone without complications. I value you, not for what you give me, but for who you are. And I want to know if there is a possibility for more, or if we should part ways when the time comes. I want to be honest about my feelings, just as I hope you are about yours. His honesty was disarming, a reflection of the respect and care he had consistently shown. She considered the question, reflecting on the experiences they had shared, the long conversations, the laughter, the shared silences, and the quiet moments of vulnerability. She realized that this connection had changed her in subtle but profound ways. She felt more confident, more open to trust, and more aware of the value of genuine companionship. There was a warmth in her heart she had not anticipated, a sense of possibility she had previously thought unlikely. After a pause, she spoke again. I am open to exploring what could come next with caution and respect for both of us. I value my independence, but I also value this connection. I am willing to see where it leads, to understand it fully without rushing or forcing anything. I want to continue experiencing this honestly and openly, if you are willing to do the same. Her words were measured, clear, and thoughtful, reflecting the journey of growth and understanding they had shared. He reached out and gently held her hand, a small gesture that carried a profound significance. I am willing, he said softly. I want to experience this with you, honestly, without expectation, and with respect for who we are individually. I do not want to lose what we have built, and I am willing to take this next step with care. The sincerity in his voice mirrored her own, and the moment felt like a quiet affirmation of mutual respect, trust, and the potential for deeper connection. In the weeks that followed, their bond continued to strengthen. They navigated the delicate balance of independence and companionship, exploring new experiences together while honoring their personal space. There were moments of laughter, shared stories, and quiet reflection. They celebrated small joys, supported each other through minor struggles, and found comfort in the consistency of their presence. Each moment reinforced the trust and understanding that had become the foundation of their relationship. She noticed changes in herself that she welcomed, the ability to be more open, to accept kindness, to appreciate connection without fear or hesitation. He too displayed subtle changes, showing a deeper vulnerability, a willingness to express emotions he had previously kept hidden. They had both grown individually and together, discovering that meaningful connection could exist without losing oneself, without compromising personal values or independence. Challenges arose occasionally, as they naturally do in any relationship. Misunderstandings, moments of doubt, and external opinions tested their bond. Yet each challenge was met with communication, patience, and respect. They learned to listen, to respond thoughtfully, and to prioritize the integrity of their connection over fleeting frustrations or external pressures. These experiences strengthened their understanding, reinforcing the foundation of trust and mutual appreciation. One evening, after a long conversation about their dreams and aspirations, they sat quietly on a park bench, the night sky above them filled with stars. The gentle rustling of leaves and the distant hum of the city created a peaceful backdrop. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey they had shared, for the moments of honesty, respect, and understanding. It was in these quiet, unassuming moments that she realized the depth of their connection and the value of what they had built together. He turned to her, his expression soft and sincere. I do not want to rush anything, nor do I want to impose. But I want you to know that I care deeply about who you are and what we share. I am willing to see this grow naturally with patience and respect. She looked into his eyes, seeing the truth in his words, feeling the same depth of care and consideration reflected in her own heart. There was no grand declaration, no pressure for immediate answers, only the quiet recognition of mutual feelings and the